Welcome to Feminine Roadmap Podcast. I'm your host, Gina-r-Farrar. Each week, I bring you an inspiring conversation to help you navigate the challenges and changes of midlife so that you can not only survive, but thrive in your second half. Hello, Feminine Roadmappers. It is Gina here, and today we are going to be talking about the life-changing power of trusting yourself. How many times have we doubted ourselves or waiting for permission, waiting for someone to give us the green light? We're going to talk about how we can trust ourselves. And to introduce that topic to us, today I'm talking with Margie Warrell. She is the author of You've Got This, Life-Changing Power of Trusting Yourself. So without further ado, Margie, thank you so much for saying yes to me today.
Oh, my pleasure. It's great to be with you.
Fantastic. So why don't you go ahead and tell my tribe a little bit about yourself and why this message?
Well, as you can probably tell by my accent, or you will as I speak more, I'm from Australia, and my background is pretty diverse and now pretty international too. But the message in the book of trusting ourselves, of learning to defy the self-doubts that so often hold us back, has really been born from my own life experiences. There's so many, I guess, books are, and my own life work is. And I grew up on a small dairy farm in rural Australia, the big sister of seven, first to go to college at 18. And I've spent much of my last 25 years living and working around the world, raising my 4 kids, supporting my husband's job, which has moved us around the world, and forging my own career while, I guess, taking on so much of the work around raising our kids too. And time and time again, particularly with women and women of, our generational bracket, I find so many women doubt themselves too much, trust themselves too little, settle too quickly, and sell themselves too short. And I know this because I've experienced it, and when you spot it in others, you got it in yourself, and I spot it a lot, and I got it a lot. And I think, if anything, I've just become better at rising above those doubts and really practicing that act of faith and of courage of trusting myself. And what I've learned is that it's powerful and it's liberating and it's transformative. And I wrote this book during a period where I've frankly had massive derailed plans, a lot of disruption in my life. And I wrote the book I wanted to read.
Isn't that so empowering to think about the fact that we have the answers inside of us a lot of the time?
Oh, yeah.
And we are either afraid of the answers or, like you said, we don't trust ourselves. But isn't that funny that you wrote the book for the answers you wanted? I started the podcast because I wanted to have these conversations. I love how you said this. We doubt ourselves too much, we trust ourselves too little, and we sell ourselves short too often. Mm-hmm. Now, how do you help women shift from that lack of self-trust, that place of doubt, that belief system that somehow we need permission from who knows where? How do you help women shift that?
Yeah. And who do we need permission from? I'll tell you, just from ourselves. Not our husbands or our parents or our kids or our friends, from ourselves. But how do we do that, and how do I do that? And I guess I do, it's kind of my life calling, right? And how I do that is in lots of formats. But, whether it's through my books or it's through my Live Brave Women's Weekends as a coach, as a speaker. However, it begins with just the decision not to let our fear and doubts hold the reins of power in our lives any longer. And of course, that's a decision we have to make and remake and remake and remake. If we could just make it once and go, oh, that's it, I trust myself and I'm brave forevermore. Heck, none of us would be here and we wouldn't be doing this. We'd just all be out there powerfully living our lives. Fear is wired into our psychological DNA And as women, we're so often socialized to not value our unique talents and our worth and believe in ourselves to the degree that often men are, in terms of just, the role models and what's in the history books. And so I think women can struggle with it more. I'm not saying, that's a generalization, but so I think just getting really present, I would say to anyone, and I have these Live Brave Women's Weekends, which are a sort of a deep dive immersive weekend. And, at the start of that weekend, I get everyone to do an audit of their lives. What's working, what's not? And if you're loving every aspect of your life, if you are just so richly fulfilled in your relationships, with your partner and broader, if you're feeling fantastic in your health and well-being, you feel great about your body, if you feel on fire in your career, brilliant, fantastic. I don't have a lot to say except make sure you're taking care of yourself. But so often we're not feeling lit up in our lives. And there's aspects of our lives where we feel decidedly dissatisfied. And so to anyone listening, I would just encourage you to think about which of the aspects of your life that you aren't feeling inspired and fulfilled and satisfied. And sure, I get it. As we go through the seasons of life, I actually have 4 children, and I remember when they were little, and I was having lots of babies and juggling balls. There's parts of our lives that get put on the back burner. That's just life. We go through seasons, and some things go on the back burner. However, with that said, sometimes situations that aren't great can become normalized, and we grow a bit numb to them, and we just become complacent with a marriage that leaves us feeling lonely, where we're lacking the intimacy that we want, or we're feeling just really unhappy in what we're doing with our time every day, or feeling undervalued in our broader relationships and social circles, or like we've got a burning dream but it's been left under the bed so long that we're kind of like, And so just getting really present to what it's costing you in your one and only precious life, to quote Mary Oliver. What is it costing you to be settling and to be continuing on the path that you're on, that default path? And I think so often that default path we're on, it's not moving us towards something that's going to make us excited and fulfilled and connected and alive. It's actually more of the same. And often we discount the cost of inaction. We think to ourselves, oh, now's not the time. I'm too busy. I'm too tired. I'm too this. I'm too that. We have all these reasons and rationalizations. But if your future that's rolling out ahead of you, that default future, isn't one that's inspiring you and it's addressing the things you're not liking, then do not underestimate the profound toll that's taking.
That is such a powerful thought. It really is, because it's so easy. When life gets rolling, like you said, we have all of these things up in the air. We talk about midlife, all the transitions in jobs and our children growing up and our parents aging and our marriages sometimes struggle. Many people are retiring or switching jobs, and we feel that sense of dis-ease. A lot of women aren't sure what's next. And so it's easy to run to whatever feels safe and get comfortable with that dissatisfaction, or think that in our conversation in midlife, that this is just the way midlife is. And that's why having this discussion with you is so important, is because we do not have to lose connection with passion and joy and connection to our lives. And so how often do we become numb in all of the transitions and challenges and forget the vibrancy that we're missing?
And I'm 51. Which for some people will sound young and for others sounds old, and whatever. It's a number. It's just a number. And I feel fantastic. And I hear people all the time talking about, like I'm old and retirement. I've only got so many years left. I'm like, man, I'm still coming out the gates.
Yes.
I feel great. And it's so often we talk the language we use just hems us in, and we use this old language, or we use this tired language, or we use this just self-defeating language that keeps us from just even thinking about how else things could be. And every one of us at every point in our lives has the ability to do something to feel a deeper sense of satisfaction and a greater sense of aliveness in our lives. And yet often it's that belief that, I'm past my prime. This is just how it is such BS. This is just how marriage is. This is just how it is to be growing old. I mean, I get it. Our bodies are getting older. I need to wear glasses now, and I didn't need to wear them a couple of years ago when I'm writing or looking at my phone. But just that kind of, just to be rolling over in this mood of resignation isn't great, or in this mood of apathy or of powerlessness. And so I guess at the heart of actually so much of my work is to empower people, to help you step into your power, to make changes. And if you don't think you can, well, that's you're disempowering yourself right out the gate through that belief system. And so what is it we can do? One is get present to the price we're paying for staying on the course we're on. And two is to just step back and ask yourself, how is it that I disempower myself? How do I give my power away to other people, to circumstances, to the beliefs that we have, to the fears we have, to the self-doubts we have? And, I believe that, the period of our lives when we're no longer running around after kids, I'm going to be an empty nester come the fall. And I'm really excited. I will miss having my last child at home, but I'm like, oh, wow, I have so much freedom to do so many cool things without having to feel guilty about not being with, kind of getting home as soon as I can when I travel. And as I shared with you before we started this interview, I travel a lot. But I'm so excited that he's going off somewhere great and he's starting his next chapter, etc. And so I think this season of life when we're moving out of that period where, for those of us who are mothers, where that's been, a really big responsibility and a big part of our lives, is actually facing it with wonder and possibilities of like, wow, I didn't feel that freedom to spend time on these things before, or to travel, or to do that course, or to commit that time. And now I can. And how exciting is that? And I think that all of us have a song in us, have work in us, have talents and gifts, and we deprive everyone around us of what that could be when we let those doubts and fears sit in the driver's seat and go, who are you to do that? You're too old. You're not that talented. You never did get that degree, or you should have done that years ago. And we come up with these, pardon my language, but just these BS stories that we spin, and we treat them as though they're the truth, and they are not the truth. They're just a story we're telling ourselves.
Yes. Let's talk about that. The belief systems that we hold are by far the most powerful thing in our lives. Mm-hmm. It actually runs, every script running in our mind is running every area of our lives. The way we react in our relationships, the way we think about, when we look in the mirror, what do we say to ourselves? When we get up in the morning, we try something new. There's so many scripts that are running, and many of those scripts are running without us even being aware that they're back there. The outcomes of our life point back to the script, do they not?
Yeah, absolutely. And even from a young age, I remember growing up, my dad, he milked cows for 50 years. And he was a loving dad. You could say a simple guy, wasn't very educated himself. And I remember as a young girl, Dad always called me a bumblefoot because I wasn't very coordinated. And I was in my 30s before I realized I actually could run. Like I always thought, well, I can't run because I'm so uncoordinated. And I was living in the US. I was actually living in McLean, Virginia. And I remember being in a boot camp and we had to do running. And then one day I realized I'd run 8 miles. And I was like, I had a script all my life that I couldn't run. And now I just ran 8 miles. I'm like, what other scripts have I got that I can't do that? And I did it. And I think so often we have these scripts and we're not even present to how much we treat them as the truth. Mm-hmm. And they're not the truth. They're not the truth of who we really are. They're just the stories that we've been telling ourselves for so long that they've become a truth for us. And so stepping back and really challenging our stories and doubting our doubts. And I wrote about that in You've Got This. Actually, the whole second chapter is called Doubt Your Doubts. And It's just stepping back and questioning, you know, who is it that you would be if you didn't have that belief? And what is that belief costing you? And what if actually it's completely wrong? and it's going through an exercise of really challenging those doubts and daring to defy those doubts. Well, what if I can do the very thing I said I couldn't do? What if I'm actually not too old at all? What if actually I'm the perfect age to do this? And we think we should have been 30, but actually maybe 55 is just the perfect age for me to start this, because I wouldn't know everything I know unless I'd had every experience I've had. And so I really think challenging those stories, which is an act of courage on its own, because we are wired to look for reasons to prove that we are right. And we are wired to, with what's called the perceptual defense mechanism. It's like a cognitive bias that we have. And I didn't share all of my background, but my background is in business and psychology and coaching. But, you know, we're wired with different biases. And one of the biases we have is to look for evidence that proves we're right and to discount evidence that actually contradicts it. So if you want to come up with reasons why you're too old to do something, you're going to come up with plenty. And if you're going to come up with reasons why, well, you just can't because you're not educated enough or experienced enough, you'll come up with them. But if you're willing to actually go beyond that and look a bit harder, you know, there'll be lots of people who are your age or older starting up things. I mean, there's so many examples of people who started their business at age 50, whatever, or 60, or, you know, I think of Diana Nyad who swam from, you know, Cuba to Key West at age, gosh, I can't remember, 64 or something.
She was in her 60s, yep.
And how cool is that? It's easy to say she was too old to do that, and she did it. And so, as she said, you know, she was stronger at that age because she had a mental toughness and grit. So I just think we've got to be so careful, particularly when it comes to age, about the stories we have around age. And we make 50 mean something. And, you know, J-Lo, when she was in the, whatever you think of J-Lo, but when her halftime performance obviously got a lot of media recently. And I just love that there is a woman who's 50. I mean, obviously she focuses on having a body that's fit and strong beyond anything that I focus on myself. But I mean, she's showing, hey, 50 is what we make 50 to be. So is 60 and so is 70. So,
you know, I've had a guest on my show she's 80 now, but she started her first career after 50. She raised 6 kids. And then she got her dream job by going and taking what was available and working her way up to a PR job. And then she ended up modeling, which she wasn't planning on. So she got a modeling career in her 60s. Then she started writing books. And it's like life, like you said, once your kids are grown, if you've had children, you're at this season of life where it's like a whole new start in a lot of ways. And you have all that life experience. You have all that knowledge, all of that wisdom, all of the failures to teach you, right? What paths you can take. All of the ups and downs and challenges have created a richness in our souls, right? An understanding in our minds. We can make quicker decisions. You know, they say when they date later, they get married much quicker because they've already been through, they know what they're looking for. How much greater is it for us as women to really look back over our life and look for those markers of the things that brought us joy, things that we've had success at, and how we can pull those things forward and reinvent ourselves in this new season of life. Because if you're 50 and the average lifespan for a woman is around like 80, that's 30 years of your life left to live, left to impact.
And you know, it's not just about quantity of years. You
Right.
know, I don't want to, last thing I would want is to kind of spend my 70s in a wheelchair, you know, not be living, like I want to age strong. So I think it's not just how old do I get to be, it's how what's my experience of being a 75-year-old. And I know for me, it's like, I hope I'm still flying around the world and speaking and running programs well into my 70s and well into my 70s, maybe my 80s, like why not? And so I think it's really important to have a really strong and inspiring vision of how you want to age. And when you talked about reinventing yourself, I think it's a really important, that concept of reinvention. And some people do this like total overhaul, and who they are, like everything about them changes in their life. And for other people, it's maybe not so dramatic. And, you know, for me, I can't imagine I'm going to have some massive reinvention, frankly, because I really love the life I have. I'm sure there'll be a continual evolution. And I think give yourself permission to do it your way. Not everyone has to go and, you know, throw out their wardrobe, pack up their home, move somewhere else and kind of become a different person. It might just be there's an aspect of your life you want to give an overhaul to, and give yourself permission to figure that out and let it evolve. It doesn't have to be something dramatic, because sometimes I think our notions of how something should be can hem us in from just exploring. Just explore things, try things.
That sense of curiosity in life, bring the curiosity and the wonder back, because looking at those things with the questions that you mentioned earlier, you know, where am I feeling that dissatisfaction? Where am I feeling that sense of holding back or not quite feeling like this is exactly what I love to do with my life? It's okay. It's not like tomorrow you're going to make a decision and everything will be upright again. It's that journey, right? It's the process of being open and curious to where it's going to take you as you seek out the answers to those questions, right? Really get in touch with the thoughts that you're having, the beliefs that you have, and thinking about what you love to do. When we trust ourselves, there's so much power and freedom in that.
Yeah. And that's right. And that idea of trusting in yourself, which is kind of the heart of my new book. This is my fifth book, actually. And my work is around emboldening people to live and lead more bravely. And when it comes to courage and bravery, which I kind of use those terms quite synonymously, it's taking action in the presence of fear and self-doubt. And of course, none of us are immune to fear. None of us can get rid of all our doubts. They're there, and actually some of them serve us. They serve our well-being. But self-trust is itself an act of faith, that I'm going to trust myself that whatever happens, I can handle it. I'm going to trust myself that if I have this little thing tugging away at my heart, that it's there for a reason. I'm going to trust my intuition that, you know what, maybe I need to pay attention to this. Maybe I need to steer toward this, or maybe I need to steer away from it. And trusting in our innate capacity to deal with life and to rise above the challenges that sometimes pull us down. There's so much power in that. And when you give yourself permission to trust yourself, it actually frees you to try new things you might not otherwise try, and to learn and discover and actually realize who you really are, and just how capable you really are, and how little reason you actually ever had to doubt yourself.
I love that idea that, you know, courage is that presence of fear and self-doubt and taking action anyway. I think we've heard that definition before, but a lot of the times when we're talking about fear, Margie, fear is just our perception of something. Fear is that paper tiger a lot of the times. It's not really something real. It's real to us, but it's not necessarily real. Like maybe getting in that mindset of what is the worst thing that can happen? Like, what am I actually thinking the negative outcome will be of trying this new thing? You know, just really challenging that belief that this is truly scary. You know, I find that people get scared about things that really aren't scary. So there's back to that script we talked about. So when you talk about helping women and men, it sounds like you help everyone deal with courage and bravery. What is your kind of framework that you use to embolden people? How do you break people free from the shackles of fear and doubt?
Well, part of it is, as I mentioned, getting people, we're motivated in the simplest form, and everyone will have heard that, to pursue pleasure and avoid pain, right? And we're actually more motivated to avoid pain than we are to pursue pleasure. And so I could tell you, think about what you'd really love and go out there and do something and move you toward it. And maybe that will be enough. That's great. But often that isn't enough, because we have to take a risk, a psychological risk. We have to risk that we'll fail. We have to risk we'll make a mistake. We have to risk that if we leave a relationship, we could be lonely. And so often that risk aversion drives people to stick with situations and circumstances that aren't what they want, even though they know there's something they would really like. And so part of it is motivating ourselves two ways. One is, what is it you want? But two is, get really present to the pain of staying where you are, of not taking that risk. Yes, there's a risk you might fall short and there's a risk you might fail, but what's the risk that you take if you don't take a risk? And, the research shows that at the end of our lives, we regret far more the risks that we did not take than the risks that we did. We regret far more the things that we didn't do than the things that we did do. And of course, that has some level of generalization. Sometimes there's things we do regret, though obviously if we've learned something from them and grown from them, then there's a value in them. But just stepping back and asking yourself, what's the risk? What risk am I taking by not taking a risk? By playing safe, by sticking with the status quo, by not having that hard conversation, by not making that change? What is it I'm putting at risk here? I then think it's really important to look at what are the small little actions I can take. It's not about, trying to climb the mountain in one go. If there's something really big, it's like, what's something small you could do? However small it might be just pick up the phone and invite someone out for coffee. It might be, doing some research and learning about something you're interested in, looking at some courses that you could sign up with. It might be sharing how you're feeling with your partner or a friend, which can be really, really hard and brave for some people. And so just taking action is so important. And then over time, surrounding yourself in an environment that helps you move into change. And if you've got an environment around you that's keeping you small and keeping you settling, think about how could you make changes to that environment, whether that's the social relationship environment you have or, other aspects of your environment that just keep undermining you.
That concept of community is so important, isn't it? Who we spend our time with, who we allow into our dreams. What if someone just recently said, you have a microphone, right? We all walk around with a microphone and we decide who to give that microphone to. We have the ability to either hand the mic over or turn the microphone down if it's someone close to us. Who do we allow to speak into our lives, and what do we allow their words to do to us, or what impact do we allow them to have? So that environment, in my mind, it comes down to a lot of the times the people that we spend time with. And I think the work that you do, events like the ones that you do, are an incredible place for someone who may not have that community. They've never had that kind of supportive community, to go into an environment like your event and meet other people who are on this journey of life, facing some of the same challenges, facing some of those same emotions, and finding what it is like to be supported in that safe space, right? With someone holding a space for you while you figure things out. Because let's be honest, Margie, we've been trying to figure things out since we got here. It's like that's the process of living, is it not? It's engaging with what's in front of us and what.
Yeah, there's such a power in surrounding yourself and connecting in with other people who will support you. And I believe that as we go through life, sometimes, and I think women more so than men with this one, we can find ourselves in habit relationships with people because we've known them a long time. And we're in those relationships because they're familiar and they're comfortable and they might go back a long time, but they're not necessarily serving us in the chapter we're in now or moving into. And women, by nature, we're communal by nature. We care about keeping harmony in our relationships. That's important for us. We want to connect and belong, and that's all part and parcel of what makes us wonderful, and it allows us to be who we are. However, I think it's sometimes a trap we can fall into where, whether it's because of guilt or I think a false sense of expectation, that we can stay in relationships with people who keep us small and fuel our doubts and stop us from making changes that would actually really serve us. And so just being careful of who you spend time with, and and ask yourself, if there are certain people, if you have an aspiration, it's something you'd love to do, are there people in your life that you would never want to share that with? Or if something really wonderful happened, you wouldn't want to share it because you wouldn't want to alienate them? or you risk their ridicule, or making a derisive comment. And if that's the case, just ask yourself, how's that costing you, and who is it that you would love to spend more time with, and how could you proactively go out there and nurture relationships with the kind of people that help bring out your best and broaden your thinking.
Women, we're nurturers, right? We have a tendency to pour out and pour out and pour out. And I feel like one of the things that we struggle with is allowing other people to pour back into us, knowing how to ask for help, knowing how to ask for the things that we need. I feel like that's a huge challenge for women, to really allow that give and take to happen, so that we are not just enriching others, but they're being allowed to enrich us as well.
Yeah.
That community for women is so important. You ever just feel like you're lonely without it?
And it's what I actually started to run my Live Brave weekends about 5 years ago in Australia, but now in America, and I run them in Asia last year, is there is a magic that happens when women come together to learn and to laugh and to lift each other, sometimes to cry a little and sometimes to, just let down their guard. And there's just a magic that happens. And we just elevate each other. And when we get real and we really lower our masks and say, this is what I'm dealing with, and this is what I haven't been dealing with, where I've been kind of just pushing it to the side because it's all been too hard, it just opens us up to growing and blossoming in amazing ways, and the friendships that can be formed and the support. And I always, and certainly with my weekends, I've always create these online, whether it's on Facebook or with the one I just did one in Asia and on WhatsApp, but, the women stay in conversation like years and years after the actual event. Like, oh, I just did this and I just did that, and everyone's cheering each other on. It's only positive. It's just such a beautiful thing. And so I just encourage any women who are listening, if you're not surrounded, or if you don't have a sisterhood of women around you, look for avenues and forums and gatherings and groups or create one yourself where you can bring together a group of like-minded women on a regular basis to do that.
Would you agree that some women struggle to know how to do that? For some reason in their mind, they're shy about it. They might be afraid to reach out.
Yes, it comes back to the fear. I'm afraid that if I ask people, they won't want to come. I'm afraid to reach out to people because I don't think I'm that likable, or I'm that worthy, or people will have rejected me in the past and I don't want to be rejected. And this lack of belief in ourselves keeps us from taking the actions that would actually build our belief in ourselves. If you're with me, like the problem is reflective of how people are responding to it. No, I'm too scared to do that because I ran a Live Brave weekend in Washington, D.C., just outside on Chesapeake Bay last year. And I caught up with a woman in Singapore, where I'm currently living, which was very much a derailed plan, was not part of my plan at all to move to Singapore. But I found myself having to really move there because my husband was transferred there very unexpectedly. And I caught up with a woman who lives in the US, who I knew from when I'd lived in Virginia. And she was there and really unhappy. Really, she had previously worked, but she hadn't worked for a few years. She'd put on a lot of weight and wasn't feeling good in herself. She said, I feel like I'm depressed. I think she, certainly wasn't very happy. And I said to her, I would love you should come along to my weekend. I'm running it in like 3 months' time. Like literally it was about 30 miles from her home. I was flying across the world from it. It was about 30 miles from her home. And she said, are any of the other women that we used to know through the school that the kids went to coming? I said, I don't know, but I just encourage you to sign up and come anyway, because I just know you'll get so much from it. And I don't like selling like I'm trying to sell something, because it's not like I'm not. I wanted to come because I knew she'd get value. I contacted her again a few weeks before and said, look, there's some spots left. And she said, oh, I'll think about it. And then in the end, she emailed me about 2 weeks before and said, oh, I've just got a lot on at the moment. And I know she didn't. And I know she was just uncomfortable about coming on that weekend on her own. And it made me sad, because I thought, if you came on this, the point it's called a Live Brave weekend is because it helps you rise above the fears, but her fear kept her from even turning up on the weekend. And yet there were some others that had flown in from Canada and across the country to be there. And it had been really scary. One woman had been married for 28 years and her marriage had ended. And she said it was the first time she had ever traveled on her own in her life without her husband. And I think she was from Calgary or somewhere. And she said it was terrifying. And then at the end of the weekend, she said it was the best thing she ever did. So sometimes the scariest things for us can be the best things for us. And hence why I would say to anyone listening, I mean, it might be just picking up the phone and inviting someone out for coffee. Embrace discomfort as a prerequisite for your own happiness and your own success. And I say this at corporate conferences, embrace discomfort as a prerequisite for your success, because it is. If you only do what's comfortable, you're never going to do what can serve you and what's possible for you. So give yourself permission to get uncomfortable. Just say, I'm going to just get really uncomfortable now. I'm going to notice the butterflies in my stomach and the sick, nauseous feeling I have, and I'm scared I'm going to get rejected, and just notice it and go, you know what? But at least I'm doing something for myself and I'm not letting fear call the shots.
Challenge that and say, okay, well, I'm feeling this, but what is the worst thing that can happen? Sometimes asking ourselves the question, it's really our idea of the situation that's the worst thing that can happen. The reality is the person you're reaching out to probably is not going to say awful things or do something to hurt you. It's just our own insecurities, right? Where do we get the idea that we don't have value as women? Where do we get the idea that we don't have something to offer to the world around us when women rule the world literally in the way that we raise our children, the way we support our husbands if we're married? There's so many things that women do. I think part of it comes back to acknowledging yourself for who you are and what you've contributed, learning to celebrate those things that we do. You know, I feel like we often compare ourselves and we forget to really look at the amazing people that we are and the amazing things that we're doing and the relationships that we've built, maybe businesses that we've built, maybe the great kids that we've raised, right? When do we stop and say to ourselves, I did that?
Yeah.
And I did a good job.
Yeah. And so often we are, and I have a whole chapter in You've Got This, purely for women, and addressing how much we talk ourselves down and sell ourselves short. And we are so good, even when we get a compliment and someone says, oh, that is fantastic, you did such a great job, or that was such a great meal, or you look terrific. We are so quick to go, oh, well, you know, it's okay, but I mean, I burnt the potatoes, or, oh, thank you for the dress, but oh my gosh, you know, it's a bit tight here, or I got it for a discount, or, you know, like we struggle to own our strengths and to own our successes and to own and really just let soak in the praise that can come our way and to own that. And I know I do this myself. Believe me, I know this because I've done it, and I work really hard now. When someone gives me a compliment, to just say, thank you, I appreciate you saying that, versus, oh, thank you, but oh my gosh, but I forgot to do this bit, or I could have done better at that bit, or whatever. And so I think we can be really hard on ourselves, and just being kinder to ourselves and stopping beating up on ourselves, and stop setting the bar so unrealistically, ridiculously, impossibly high that we spend our entire lives feeling like we're not enough, that we just are inadequate in some way or in lots of ways. And I think so many women live their entire lives with this nagging feeling of inadequacy.
Yes, absolutely. But isn't it true, Margie, that we all have success and failure? We all have strengths and weaknesses. We all have the yin and yang of all things. Perfection is not a reality. So there's a beauty in the mess of our lives that maybe the problem is we're looking for what we think is the goal of having everything, quote, right, when there's something to be said for the journey that we're on and where we're at and the beauty of that and what can I learn from this and what can I draw from this situation, right? And honoring a journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And when it comes to just life is a journey, and none of us ever arrive. We are always on a journey of becoming, all of who we can be.
Isn't that the truth? That's one of the things, Margie, that I've said over and over again. I used to chafe against the idea of process. I struggled with the fact that you don't get to do the one and done, or you don't get to have it in a nice little neat box. Deal with the problem, learn the lesson, check that off the box and put it away. It's layers of learning. It's layers of experiences. And when we lean into the process, there's a lot to be grateful for. There's a lot to find and feel joy because of the process of life. This whole experience of podcasting, for example, when I started it, it was just to have conversations, and it was just me and a friend. And then when she stepped away, I was like, how am I going to do this? And then I was able to get a feature in a Women's Day magazine, and then PR people started reaching out. And I have met some of the most amazing people like yourself. And when we live in a place where we don't see what's going on in the world, we don't realize how many amazing people are out there, how many amazing things they're doing. And some of them are just like us, right? We might be measuring incredible in a twisted sort of way. What are we giving ourselves honor for? What are we not giving ourselves honor for? And like you said, the community, finding those people that inspire us to really recognize that, yeah, I can do this too. Your book is called You've Got This. We have to really shift our minds to what can I do instead of the can't, won't, don't know how. You don't need to know how. Just take the next best step. Do something.
Chapter 1 of the book is don't wait for confidence. Begin before you feel ready. Because you do not, I have a podcast too. And technology is not my strength, actually.
Me either.
And I struggle. I fumble through it. I do it poorly. I'm actually noticing the microphone you have set up. I'm like, I just feel like I haven't mastered it. But I decided I was going to launch my podcast, and I wasn't going to wait until I actually knew how to do it all brilliantly. I was just going to do it. And so I still can, it's called the Live Brave podcast. And if you listen to it, the audio quality, it is not like studio quality. It's average. Sometimes it's better depending on where I am and how I've got set up. But just it's the same with writing. Frankly, writing my books or giving a speech. If I had waited until I knew what I was doing, I wouldn't have done any of the worthwhile things I've ever done in my whole life. Imagine if we had to wait till we knew what we were doing to have children. We wouldn't even be here. It's by giving ourselves permission to start before we feel ready. It just blasts open this whole new world of possibilities for us. Because then we're like, well, I don't have to nail it. I don't have to do the most brilliant job. I'm giving myself permission to learn as I go. And that is just a really powerful place to live from.
All right. So truth be told, technology is like my nemesis. Getting all of the skills that it takes to do podcasting, I never would have thought. I followed this video and I watched it and watched it and watched it and watched it. Like, it took me so many times. Watching it, pausing it, doing the thing, rewatching it, pausing it. Did I do the thing right? Like, it was hardcore. But like you, Margie, you know what? Just put the thing out there.
Yeah.
Just put it out there. Yeah. Don't wait, because I only get better at anything I do by doing it.
Yeah. And that's absolutely the crux of it all. And for anyone listening, what if you gave yourself permission today to do something not brilliantly? Like, to give yourself permission to do a really lousy first go around. And, my daughter, as I shared with you, I'm in New York City at the moment. I have a daughter at college here. And when she was in high school, she said she'd love to try stand-up comedy. And she's really naturally very funny. And I know I'm biased as a mom, but I think she's pretty funny. And her funniest lines are always at my expense, making fun of her mother. She said, "Oh my God, you're such good material having a mother who's a, self-help author and motivational speaker," because she always laughs at because I run around the house and I snap at my husband and I can't find my keys. She goes, people could just see you now. Like, you don't have it all together. I'm like, I know I don't have it all together. So anyway, I said, you should just go and try some stand-up comedy. She goes, oh, Mom, I can't do it. Do you know how scary it is? And I have to prepare and I'm not that good. I'm not that funny. You just tell me that because you're my mom. Anyway, she moved to New York City for college. And, of course, New York City is the heart of where comedians get their start. And she knew that. I said, so you're going to go and do a stand-up comedy, like an open mic night, they're called. And she's like, oh, I'm really busy settling in, and I'm really busy with studies. I'm really busy here, and I'm really busy there. Anyway, this went on for a few months. And I said, Madeline, what if you gave yourself permission to do a really half-baked job and not be that great? And you just went along, you wrote your best couple of minute script. So anyway, I somehow managed to kind of get her to the point where she's like, okay, I'm going to give myself permission to do a really bad one because maybe that will be funny one day to say how bad I was. I said, exactly. Like, just embrace it with a sense of humor. So she goes off to an open mic night. She does her script, whatever, it's called, I don't know. And there's a woman there that's giving feedback. And the woman said to her, she said, you're actually pretty good for a first go. And Madeline's like, really? She goes, yeah. And she said, I know you make fun of your mum being a motivational speaker, but she must be pretty motivating for you to be at 19 in New York and doing stand-up comedy. And I share that story because by giving herself permission not to be that good, she actually was better than she thought she'd be. And I think that applies for all of us. If you give yourself permission not to be great, it allows you to try things so that actually you can be better and better and better and better. And I just think that's, if taking from this whole conversation is just give yourself permission to do something and not be brilliant at it, and actually even to be just extremely average, is just going to open up a whole lot of new things.
There's a saying out there, I know you know it. There's a lot of extremely average people who are incredibly gifted because they used extraordinary effort and they applied themselves. They just didn't quit. Where you have super gifted people who are not as successful because they're not making the effort. They're not putting themselves out there and being willing to suck, right? But I can honestly say that when I'm in a place of curiosity, Margie, when I'm willing to just kind of go, you know what, let's just see what happens. The journey's a little bit more enjoyable because I'm just letting it be what it's going to be. And like you said, I think a lot of the times we surprise ourselves. And just because you try something doesn't mean you have to keep doing that thing, but why not try it, right? Almost treat life a little bit like a smorgasbord. Just try all the different things and see what trips your trigger.
Not all of us are going to do things, but here's what I've learned. Like, I've never aspired to do stand-up comedy. Just has never been something I've wanted to do. I've never aspired, yet I get on a stage all the time. So it's not that I've never aspired to be a fiction writer, a novelist, yet I've written 5 books. So I don't aspire to be J.K. Rowling because, frankly, I probably don't have I'm sure I don't have the talent, and I've never aspired to be a comedian because I don't think I have the natural comical talent there either. But here's what I've learned, and I've met a lot of people, and I'm talking thousands and thousands. I very rarely meet someone who aspires to do something from a place where it's a deep, heartfelt calling and not some whim like, oh, I want to be famous, because that's about our ego, who doesn't have within them the seeds of talent to do it. For someone who wants to start a catering business, or someone who wants to climb a mountain, or, write a novel, or, it's because it's in them to do it. And, you can watch American Idol and see the people who do terrible auditions and they think they're really good, and go, okay, but those people really want to do it and they really don't have any talent. I would actually say that it's not a deep heartstrings calling. It's just because they're infatuated with fame, which is a very different thing. So to anyone who's listening, and, there's something you kind of want to do, move in that direction. I heard Oprah a few years ago, and she said, we too often are waiting to be struck by our life purpose. But if there's something that's curious for you, that you're interested in, then move in that direction and see what you learn.
That openness, right? The openness to the new experience, the openness to an opportunity. I have someone in my life right now who is like, saying to me, you know, that's the name of your first book. I had been telling him something. He was a guest of mine. And I thought, we're on Zoom, and I looked at him and I said, my first book? And he's like, yeah, you just told me the title of your first book. And I just thought, you know, when someone sometimes throws an idea your way, just being open to it. You know, I have a half knit scarf in my room because I had some students from Korea. We hosted 9 times, and she wanted to learn to knit, one of them, and I did not know how to knit. So I learned to knit, meaning just enough to get someone else to knit, and then I never finished my project. Well, I could look at that as a failure, or that was an experience where I put myself out there, tried something new, shared it with someone else, and had an experience that enriched their lives. If I never get back to that scarf, which, by the way, I'm never going to get back to that scarf. And you know what? That's a life lesson, though, Margie, that I wanted to share. It's okay. If you try something, you get into it and you realize, yeah, you know, this isn't my thing. It served its purpose. What did we learn from it? What did we learn about ourselves? You know, how did that enrich our lives? It's okay. You don't have to be the best at everything you do, but you're not going to know what you're good at until you try, right? That's basically what you're saying. And I'm with you. There's certain things I don't have an aspiration for, but that's okay. What do we have an aspiration for?
And you know, it doesn't care, and be really careful. It doesn't matter what anybody else thinks of it. It doesn't matter if it seems really small compared to what's, you know, my mother just has a deep sense of love to be of service to people, you know, and for her, just volunteering at the local nursing home has given her real meaning and purpose. But actually for her was a brave thing to do because she lacks confidence. She's naturally shy and very private. And so for her, it seemed like, oh, but it's just such a silly little, like, it's not a big, she wasn't, you know, trying to do some massive thing. I'm like, Mom, it gives you a sense of meaning and joy. And she's a beautiful listener. And I said, go and do that. It's not about what anyone else is doing. And I think for all of us, to heck with what anyone else is doing. What is it that you feel called to do more of? What is it you feel actually called to do less of? And where do you need to reclaim the power that your fear of not having what it takes or being good enough or unworthy is doing to get in the way of that?
So on that note, Margie, if you were to give 3 gifts to my tribe from this conversation that we've had today, talking about learning to trust yourself and give yourself permission to experience life in a way that feels good for you, what 3 gifts would you give my tribe today?
1, I would say, just for today, act as though you have everything you need within you and are 100% fully worthy of what it is that you want, and act from that place. Just for today. And then if you feel any better or bolder or braver, tomorrow repeat it. Secondly, I would say, next time you find that little voice in your head criticizing you and saying, you know, who do you think you are to do that? Just speak out loud to yourself some kind words. Think of the kindest, most loving, encouraging person you know, and just speak to yourself more kindly. And thirdly, when you notice the physical sensations of vulnerability and fear rising up in your body, in your stomach, the knot in your throat, on your chest, breathe into them and just instead of going, oh my gosh, I can't, actually reframe them and going, this is me knowing I'm actually moving toward what I'm supposed to be moving toward.
Thank you so much. Margie, I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank you for sharing your wisdom, your light with my audience, your passion and mission. It's always a joy to tap into someone's spirit like that and have them pour out what lights them on fire. So thank you so much for that.
Oh, my pleasure. It's been great to talk to you.
Awesome. Today I've been speaking with Margie Warrell. She's a coach. She's a motivational speaker. She's the author of You've Got This, The Life-Changing Power of Trusting Yourself. And if you head on over to www.feminineroadmap.com/episode 148, you are going to find links to everything Margie. If you are interested in her events, I would highly recommend, whether you have someone to go with or not, that you find one and get yourself into an environment, stretch yourself and see what you are truly capable of. My friends, recognize you have what you need inside of you. It's already there. Tap into that and bring a girlfriend along.
You've got this.
You've got this. That's right. So thank you so much for being a part of our tribe, for listening to this conversation. Thank you for sharing it with another woman that came to your mind when you were listening, that you knew just needed to hear this message today. As we join arms and community, we change the world, my friends. So have courage, take the action, share it with a friend, and we look forward to talking with you all again next week. Take care, my friends. Bye-bye.